Hello, and welcome to another video in our disaster recovery using Cloud Director Availability series. Today we're going to talk about performing an actual live failover. So this would be for an actual disaster that is happening. You need to fail over to your disaster recovery site and run out of it for an extended period of time. Or maybe you're testing your DR plan, but you want to actually move the workload from your production site to the DR site for an extended period of time. So to start off with, I have the VMware KV article pulled up here. I will also put this in the description of the video, but it does have just written out some of the definitions of the different options for failover. You'll notice in the interface there's a migrate option, failover option, test option, and then once you've done one of these, there's also a reverse option, and we'll go into some of these. So today we're going to perform a failover. This one does not change the power state of the source workload, so this is a good one for, your production server rack caught on fire and everything's gone, you can't access it. You don't need to change the source workload power state, so it will not change the source workload power state in a failover. Migrate does power off the source workload, but migrate does require that your production is available because it will try to do one last sync of any and all changes before it spins up your virtual machine. So most DR scenarios are going to be a failover option anyway. Synchronization, of course, it's not going to continue synchronizing because you failed it over. It doesn't need to. We're assuming the production is down and out. Replication direction, source to destination, doesn't touch that. And target site placement runs in the destination site. And when the source is available again, you will have to reverse that protection or otherwise reconfigure replication in order to fail it back to the production site. So now that that's out of the way, we'll go to our DR site. I have my replication here. I'm going to do all actions and I'm going to fail over. You'll notice there are a couple options here. There's default or consolidate. So Cloud Director Availability does not use snapshots, but you can think of it similarly to snapshots, right? If you have 20 instances of this virtual machine, then you've got your initial sync disk, which is most of it, and then every instance is a small VMDK that houses all of the changes from that initial instance. So if you have 20 instances, that's 20 VMDKs it has to keep track of, that it has to, mess with. In the default option, it will spin up the virtual machine the fastest, but it will not consolidate those 20 VMDKs into one. So you will have a performance hit until you perform a consolidation on that. If you're willing to wait a little bit longer for the failover to complete, it could be because you really want that high performance right out the gate, you can choose consolidate, and it will consolidate all instances into the recovered disk, which will improve the performance of the VM, but it may increase your failover time. So that's up to you which one you want to do. We will do default because we want it to happen quickly for purposes of the demo. I have it set to automatically power on the recovered VMs. If you want them to create but not power on, you can have that unchecked. I did configure the network settings in a previous video, so we're going to apply pre-configured network settings. We do not use compute and sizing policies at this time, so we're going to ignore that. Go next. Here I will select the instance that I want to use. So for my purposes, I want the latest instance available. If for some reason you want to go back in time a little bit, maybe there's something happened to the VM and you think that this instance is bad and it won't boot because some kind of encryption hit it, what have you, I can go back in time to my earlier instance. I only have 1 day of retention here, so my earliest instance is yesterday. but I'm going to choose the latest one, assuming a fire hit my production site. Next, summary page here. I'm recovering to my Marion site. It's going to power everything on. It will use the default instance handling, meaning it will not consolidate all of the disks. I'm going to use the manually selected instance and finish. Now this will take just a couple of minutes. You can watch the progress bar here, and once it's done, it will tell you that it's done. And once it's all done, you'll see the recovery state is now failed over with a lovely little green check mark there. If I look back at my Boise data center, I will notice that my VM is still up and running, and I'll refresh the page just to show you it's still there. Yep, all right, it's right there. It's powered on. It's hanging out doing its thing because my production data center is not actually on fire, which is good. Then back in Marion, I'm going to leave this page. I'm going to go to data centers, go into my organization here, and here is my virtual machine. So it has failed over. It's hanging out. I can open the console, log in if I want to. Ideally, I would have internet. However, in my lab environment, I don't, but that's expected here. If I jump to the NIC, however, I will see it's on the internal network, which if you tuned in for my networking video, you know that I have an internal network and an isolated network. Isolated is for bubble testing. Internal is my air quotes production. So this is looking really good. And that's how you get it failed over. Now, if we go back to replication, right, it's in a failed over state. It's hanging out. You'll notice that there are no instances available anymore. I can no longer do anything with it. I can't change any settings on it. I can't synchronize it or pause it, migrate, failover. All of these options are gone because it's already failed over. It is in a failed over state. Now, if I want to fail it back to the Boise site, maybe it's been a week and the networking problem that caused my failover is gone, or maybe this was a DR exercise where I did want to run out of production for a while. Hey, I'm ready to look at going back to my production site. That's when I want to do this reverse option. So this is going to get a little interesting. So again, back in Boise, all right, this is my virtual machine that I've just failed over. It's still powered on because the failover operation does not touch the source machine. However, if I come back in here and I do reverse and get logged back into my site, you're about to reverse the replication to my Boise site. This will activate replication traffic and allow the replication to be recovered back to the source. As a result, the original virtual machine is deleted at the new destination, and recovery settings of the reversed replication will populate with recovery settings from the original machine. So at the new destination, the original is deleted. So it's telling me that back in Boise, my original VM here is going to be deleted because it's going to use the disks as a pre-seed. So this VM will go away, but it'll not need to synchronize as much data because it'll use this as an initial seed. All right, so that's what it's saying. My virtual machine in this data center in Marion, in my DR site, it will stay and it will continue running. So running my production in my DR site right now will stay. Original production site, this will go away. And if you have any questions about that, definitely reach out. And this will take just a little bit because it will deregister that original VM. One of these times it'll disappear. Okay, it's powering off. You can see that. It's going to unregister it. It's going to use those disks. So I can watch it. Stopped, consolidated. It's creating the C4 disk, which is what it calls the replication disks on the back end. We can watch the progress on our DR site, still at 59%, 61%. All right, now that completed. You'll notice in my view here that the replication job disappeared. It didn't delete itself. It moved. So I'm on the incoming replications page. So anything incoming to my DR site, well, now that it reversed, it's now outgoing from my DR site. All right, so on the outgoing replications page, I do have to change my destination site in the top right. So it defaulted to our Duluth location. I'm going to change it to Boise, and there it is. So it is reversed. I can see it is synchronizing. It's working on that first initial sync. It's at 7%. And then if I go back to Boise into my virtual data center, I'll notice that my VM is gone. I can search for it. It's just gone. Right? And that is expected. But if I go to the availability console on this side and I go to incoming, there it is. It shows up on incoming in my Boise site. And this will behave just the same as any other protection job, in that once it's finished syncing, I can change replication settings, synchronize it, pause it, change the network settings. It's still working on syncing, so it won't let me migrate. Failover, test, everything just the way we were able to before, except now my destination is Boise. You'll also notice that the networks flip themselves around. So source network is internal, target network. I will select this one since this happens to be the name of my air quotes production network. Typical acknowledgement there. And we would get it ready to fail back. And as soon as it's done, synchronizing, we could fail it back. So if this was, you needed to fail it back because it was an extended DR test or it was an actual disaster, you would want to reverse these replications well ahead of time because it will take time to synchronize. And then once they're all done, you can plan your date and time to perform the migration back to your original production site. And that is how to perform a failover in Cloud Director Availability. Thank you.